Hi. So this video has been a really long time coming. So as many of you may or may not know, I've made reference to it on social media and just in passing to some people that have asked, but I have been going through a lot health-wise over the last year, and I am finally at a place where I feel ready to talk about it in a very honest way, in a very real way. So yeah, here we are. So I'm going to break down this video into parts, into sections, and if there's a certain section that you want to kind of fast forward to, it should be down below on the video. You should be able to see like the titles of each section. So if there's something that, particularly interests you about my personal journey with what I've been dealing with, go ahead and fast forward if you'd like, but if not, stick around. It's a little bit of a long story. I actually tried to record this video a couple of days ago. I ended up recording like an hour and a half of content, basically as long as the movie. So yeah, it's not me over exaggerating when I say it's a very long story, but I'm gonna definitely try to narrow that down because that is way too much for you guys to be watching. Like, I would get bored, and this is me talking about my story. I would get bored. So definitely gonna shorten it a bit. But yeah, before we get into it, I do want to say everybody's bodies are different. Everybody reacts differently. This is just my own personal journey with the medications that I have been on, and also how my body in particular reacted to it because of just certain conditions that, it was basically just the right condition for all of the wrong things to happen. I'm not saying this will happen to you. I'm just saying that this is me, this is what's happened, and there might be some people that relate to it, maybe not, but I just kind of wanted to put that little PSA out there. Okay, so first off, I want to start with just giving a really brief overview of where I've been at health-wise over the last several years, just to give some background to better explain why what's happened over me the last year has happened. So just really briefly, I have two autoimmune conditions, one being Addison's disease, which I was diagnosed with when I was 12. I take medication for it every day, keeps me alive, and so it's, kind of important. But that basically is where your adrenal glands, which are glands that are above your kidneys in your body, they stop functioning properly and they stop releasing the proper hormones and chemicals that it should be in response to certain things in your environment. I mean, it has to do with like how your body deals with stress, and it deals with your cortisol levels, all of that. So I take medicine to replace what's not being released from those glands. Very brief, non-medical way of putting it. And then I also have celiac disease, which I was diagnosed with when I was, I believe, 18. I think it was the month that I went to college, so freshman year of college, so just a few years ago. So that's a brief overview of that. So I started birth control my freshman year of college, which was, mind you, the same year I was diagnosed with celiac, because I off and on over the last several years prior to that, I had dealt with really severe PMS symptoms on my period, like to the point where I was in the ER. And mind you, I have Addison, so my body doesn't deal well with certain stressors. So in this particular example or instance, this is a stressor for the body. Like when your body, goes through PMS symptoms and is on your period, and it's already very worn down, just for most women or all women. For me, it was even more so because it is a stressor. So my body just didn't react well to it. It was kind of an off and on thing. We found some ways to make it better in the past, and then that thing just stopped working all of a sudden. It worked for several years. I would triple dose on my medicine for my Addison's disease, and it was fine. But then all of a sudden, freshman year of college, it started going crazy, and I was like, I can't live like this, because, like I said, it's gotten to the point in the past where I would go to the ER, I wasn't able to get out of bed. Like, it would literally disrupt my life for a day. Like, first day of my period, it would always do that. And I'm like, I can't live like this. So I talked to my endocrinologist, and she was like, let's put you on birth control. So I was like, great, sounds good. Started that, and it helped, and it went away. I no longer experienced those symptoms. Now, I've been on 4 birth controls, all in all, since freshman year when I started. That first one was great. It got discontinued. The second one was the off-brand of the first one that I was on, and that one gave me really, really bad, like, mental health issues. Like, my anxiety was through the roof. I had more depressive episodes, just like, it was really bad. And so went off of that one onto a different one. Now, this is where we get to the start of my story about the last year. To give some context really quickly though, before I go into that, and I'm going to put a trigger warning up here just because I always want this to be a safe place, and I don't want to trigger anybody that's really struggling with this or has struggled with this in the past. So yeah, I just wanted to put that up there, and I'm going to reference it probably throughout the rest of the video. So if that's something that would really, really bother you, please, like, go ahead and click out. It's totally okay. Like, I don't want to cause any problems for anyone. But my sophomore year of college, I really struggled with disordered eating. I don't think I had an eating disorder, but I definitely dealt with disordered eating, and I wasn't eating enough. I was also very stressed out with a lot of stuff with college. I was very busy, and I kind of used that as an excuse to not eat. And my first semester of my sophomore year, I lost a lot of weight. I was very defensive about it when people asked, but by the time the second semester came along, I was kind of open to the idea of the fact that I was not doing okay, and I came to that realization myself, and I was like, okay, we need to work on this. So I worked on it, ate more consistently. It was a struggle, but like I was working through it. I really wanted to be healthy, and so I gained a few pounds, and that was totally needed. Like, I needed to gain that weight. It was still something I struggled with, but like I knew deep down that it was supposed to happen. So going into the summertime, I really wanted to continue on that journey, and that's kind of where I was at mentally and also physically when all of this happened. So now we get to a year ago. I was put on Apri, which was the 3rd birth control that I was on, and everything was fine. But then as time went on, I started to notice that I was gaining weight. Now, again, I really was on that journey of, trying to be okay mentally and with my health. And so I didn't want to hyper focus on it, but I also was like, well, I feel like I'm gaining weight, but like maybe this is just my body adjusting to eating more consistently still. But I'd already gained some weight, and I'd already been eating consistently for a few months. And so I was like, well, I don't know, maybe that's just what it is. And so I was trying to like not think about it, but it was still kind of like on my mind. And so by the time I went into my junior year of college and that first semester, I had already gained a lot of weight, and it kind of continued to happen. And I was a little like, what is going on? I don't know what's happening. And again, I was trying to be healthy. So I was like, there's one side of me that was trying not to freak out about it and was like, you gotta be healthy, everything's fine. But then the other side of me that was like, why is this happening? Because I am eating consistently, so I'm eating more than I was, but I've already gained some weight, and I'm eating really good foods, and I'm also exercising consistently. So like, I don't really know. And I feel like I'm also not really gaining muscle when I exercise. I feel like I'm almost losing it, but who knows? So that continued to happen, and it was just very confusing. So this is kind of the symptom portion of the video. And I don't want to do all just story based, because I could tell you timeline of like month to month of like everything that happened, but that's very time consuming, and I've already done that because like I said, I like record like an hour and a half of content. I'm not going to do that. So just to give a brief overview of the symptoms that I experienced, like I said, I started to notice the weight gain. All in all, since last year of May, I have gained, I believe, between 40 and 50 pounds. And like clockwork, every couple of months I would gain 10 pounds. Next couple of months I gained 10 pounds. And keep in mind, this is a time of my life where I exercise consistently. I'm also eating better than I ever have in my life. Like, I'm eating consistently, and I'm eating more than I had when I was dealing with the disordered eating stuff. However, I am eating really good foods. Like overall, I'm just generally eating just like whole foods, just very healthy foods. Like obviously I have sugar, everyone has sugar, but like for the most part, my like overall diet is just very clean. And so I was very confused as to why this was happening, because I was like, what in the world? So we have a lot of weight gain. I also at one point started to deal with hair issues. So I have lost a lot of hair on my head. It's gotten very thin, like the texture is really weird. And I also noticed that I was starting to get coarser hair, darker hair, and more hair in every other part of my body. And I'm just like, what's going on with that? This is weird. I don't know. I've also dealt with skin issues. So typically, like, this is really pale for me. I'm Puerto Rican and I've always been naturally tan my whole life. And obviously I get like a little bit more pale during like the winter season, but this generally, like, I've never been this pale probably in my entire life. My skin is very sensitive and it never has been sensitive, so that's a little weird. Very sensitive, very pale, just kind of a weird texture, and it's very strange. I also, because of the weight gain, like very rapid weight gain, I have, and this is something that's really hard for me to share just because it's something that like I'm very self-conscious of it, but I really want to be like real in this video because I feel like people need to understand that they're probably like, they're not alone in their struggle. So if you struggle with this or have dealt with this, like, you're not alone. But I have also had like a ton of stretch marks, and I had stretch marks because of like puberty, because of the way my body was growing at the time. However, I have way more stretch marks than I ever have, and in places that I never had them. And they're also, because of the weird changes in my skin tone, they're a different color, so they're very like red and purple. So I have them on my arms. I'd never had them on my arms before. I'd had some on my, my legs and my hips and like whatever, but like my arms was a new place and my stomach was a new place, and like this is stuff that I've been so self-conscious about, but I really feel so strongly about just like putting this out in the open, because people need to know that they're not alone. And like I think just putting it out there, it also helps me, because it's like, okay, I don't have to have this feeling of like I need to hide all the time, because it's something that I've really struggled with over the last year, is feeling the need to hide, because I just feel so not comfortable in my body because of how much it's changed within such a short period of time. But me just being open about it and just telling people, it kind of helps not only other people but me as well. So it's, I don't know, I just feel very strongly about that. So that was one thing. Another thing that was, really hard was I was very fatigued, very exhausted, very tired all the time. And I also had more Addison's flare-ups. That's another thing I deal with Addison's, is I have certain flare-ups and I get really bad joint pain and achy to where I can't get out of bed. More of those than I had ever had in one time, like very strange. And so I was just exhausted all the time. I would get up in the middle of the night a lot. Like I wasn't always sleeping consistently. And then another thing that was very concerning, was my heart issues. So by the time December, I think it was December of last year, I was dealing with heart palpitations, and it was just at rest. Like I wasn't anxious, I wasn't doing anything, but my heart rate, I think at one point the worst it ended up going up to like 130, I think, something like that, 130 beats per minute at rest. That was really concerning. My mom was like, this is not good. So my blood pressure was through the roof. And so that was really, scary. And that also caused me to not breathe very well. So my breathing was kind of weird. So that was another thing. And so all of this stuff, all of these symptoms were happening. Another thing with the skin, I am now, again, this has never happened to me because I've never had this pale of skin, but like flushed all the time. Like my cheeks flushed almost consistently. I also get hot so easily, and I get sweaty and gross, and it's just disgusting and I hate it. But that's just another thing. But I get so flushed. Like even if I would get angry about something or sad about something or frustrated, like my face, it would show on my face because I'd get so flushed. And that was so abnormal for me because I'd never dealt with that, like ever. So that's kind of an overview of the symptoms that I've been dealing with over the last year. And I think the hardest part for me with all of this was, or has been, like, there's been a lot of difficulties obviously with the physical aspect of it, and just how like hard it is when you're like working out and you love to work out, but it gets harder and harder to do certain workouts as time goes on because your body keeps gaining weight, so it's just more to you. So certain things were just getting more difficult, and it also felt like I was getting more weak with time. So there were certain exercises I literally had to stop doing because I physically couldn't do them, or it would literally hurt me too much. And so I was like, how is it that I'm working out more than I was before? Yeah, I feel weaker. Like, I feel like I'm like deteriorating. Like, that's what it felt like. But despite all of the physical challenges, I think that the mental aspect of it has been the absolute hardest part. Like, this past semester, I know a lot of you know that I went to CMC during this past spring semester of my junior year. It was wonderful and I loved it, but it was also one of the darkest times of my life mentally. Like, I really struggled, and a lot of people didn't know that or don't know that. And you know, it's not always visible because I don't always want to talk about it with certain people. Only a few select people know about that. But it was really hard because I was really struggling because it felt hopeless. It felt like no matter what I did, no matter who I talked to, because I had some doctor appointments, and you know, January of this year, so again my spring semester, I had gotten switched to a 4th birth control in the hopes that I would start to lose weight because it was a different one. And we found out that the 3rd birth control I was on, generally, like, it can cause heart stuff to happen, which is so wonderful. But I wasn't seeing anything happen over the past semester with anything. And so I was really discouraged and disappointed and just really struggling. And so I just felt so much hopelessness about my health. And I still like could cry thinking about it just because it was a really hard thing. And it still is a really hard thing. But I was going into the summer and I was determined. I was like, I'm going to get off of birth control and I'm going to try to figure out what the heck is going on. I had wanted to go off of birth control back in January. However, I knew that I was going to be in Nashville for a semester. And I also know that a lot of women experience certain symptoms and things when they go off of birth control, and I didn't really know how my body was going to react, and I didn't want to have that happen away from my family and being so far away from my family in a new place. And I think it would have been very stress inducing, and I was like, I'm not going to deal with that. So I switched to that other birth control, like I mentioned, Yaz, and that was the 4th one that I was on, 4th and last. But then when I came back home for the summer, I was like, I'm going to get off of birth control and just see. So beginning of May, so this month, I went off of birth control and I went to go get blood work done. I went to see my nurse practitioner and I was like, I need to know what's going on. Like, this is everything I've been experiencing. Please, like, help me. And she was like, I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this. Let's get you this blood work done. So I was really grateful because, like, this was kind of the first time someone seemed as concerned as they were about what I was doing or dealing with. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, finally someone gets it. Like, thank you. So I got blood work done. And boy, when I tell you, what I found was so interesting. So overall, I found that, in all of my research through this whole process, and also with just talking to other doctors that I'd had appointments with, there was just kind of this general positive view on birth control, which is fine, but it genuinely made me feel crazy. Like, I felt like I was crazy. I was like, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I eat more than I think, or maybe people are just being too nice and telling me that I'm being healthy when I'm actually not healthy and I'm not exercising enough, and that's why I'm gaining all this weight, and all of the symptoms that I'm dealing with are related to that somehow or whatever. And it was a really hard thing, and I was just like, I just felt crazy. So when I saw the results of that, blood work that I had gotten done, I cried because I was like, I'm not crazy. Like, I told myself I wasn't gonna cry in this video, but here we are. I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Like, I literally have proof. I have proof that I'm I'm not making this up. Like, this is why I'm dealing with what I deal with, and I'm not crazy. Like, it sounds stupid, but like after dealing with this for months and months and grappling with the physical aspects of it and the mental aspects of it, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was just such a weight off of my shoulders, you know? So there was a lot with the blood work, but to kind of go over it briefly, my white blood cell count was through the roof. And typically when that happens, that points to either infection or inflammation in the body. And when I tell you, I've been so inflamed just generally over the last several months, like achiness, joint pain, exhaustion, fatigue, like I was inflamed like constantly, like so much. And I also was dealing with, I forgot to mention this earlier in the symptoms, shoot, but I dealt with a lot of bloating as well. And so that was just another thing. So I just felt just gross all the time. And then I get to the hormone section, and I honestly expected my estrogen to be the problem, to be the one that was out of balance, but it actually wasn't. So and I'd never heard of this hormone prior to this experience, but my, what is it called? Sex hormone binding globulin, that one, through the roof. It was, I believe, double the amount of what is the highest within the healthy range. It was like double that. And I was like, interesting. And then I continue to read through it, and then I get to my testosterone. I believe like the lowest number it's supposed to be within like the units of measurement that they have is 13. Mine was less than 3. So then I start doing some research, and I look up like high sex hormone binding globulin and low testosterone. And every single symptom that came up with that specific hormone imbalance is exactly what I've been dealing with. And I'm like, okay, this is my problem. Like, and it was crazy. And it was interesting because I was looking at what causes this particular imbalance. And the biggest one is actually menopause, because as women get older, they actually lose testosterone, and that's why they deal with so many of their symptoms that they deal with during menopause. And I've been talking to my mom about obviously all of this, and she is kind of going through some of that, and she's like, it's interesting because you seem to be dealing with a lot of things that I'm dealing with. And so it's been super interesting, and now it makes sense as to why. But another reason, and another big reason as to why people have this hormone imbalance, is because of oral contraceptives or hormonal birth control. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is why. Another really interesting thing to note is that there's a lot of other reasons as to why people can get this like hormone imbalance, less frequently than the two that I mentioned, but they still are like things that can happen, or they're the reason as to why people deal with this imbalance. But one of them was actually adrenal deficiency, so having Addison's disease and taking a certain kind of steroid, and that steroid is the kind of steroid that I am on currently. And I was like, that's interesting. And another reason is people, or another group of people that can get this are people that undereat or deal with like just not eating enough food or being like malnourished. And I went, that's interesting. I dealt with a season of that too. Now, I don't think that my Addison's disease, I don't think that caused this imbalance, because I've dealt with it for years. And I also don't think that specifically the disordered eating caused the imbalance as well. However, I think that because I had dealt with both, when that third birth control came in, and that one just was a really bad one, I actually did some research on it. It ends up being that a lot of people they've just had horrible experiences with this one. So I don't know what it is about that one, but I think that specific one that I was on, that came into just the perfect conditions for me to deal with what I'm dealing with. And that's just what happened. And so now we get to here and where I'm at now. So there's kind of been like a trend, I don't want to say trend, but it's kind of been like a trend within the health community over the last several months concerning hormone imbalances, and people like trying to like, heal their hormone imbalances and just holistic living and holistic nutrition and exercise and everything. And so I don't want it to seem like I'm like jumping on the bandwagon, but like my blood work proves that I have a hormone imbalance, so like I'm not making any of this up. But I've done a ton of research. Like when I tell you I've done hours upon hours of research of just how to like, balance your hormones and how to, help help this particular imbalance that I deal with, and all of that. And so I've been looking into it, and I found that like I've started to change certain things with like my diet. Granted, like I said, I've already had a generally pretty healthy diet, so a lot of the stuff they were suggesting is stuff that I've already been doing. But I've also been adding more things like turmeric and ginger into my diet. Avocado is a big one, which I already eat a lot of avocado because I love avocado. Like I'm an avocado toast girly through and through. So I eat a lot of avocado. But also like really leafy greens. More protein is really recommended, as well as fiber, that kind of thing. And they also suggest like low impact workouts and strength training, which I had already been doing as well. The thing is, I had already been doing that over the last like several months, but I believe the reason as to why I wasn't getting any better and it was kind of worsening was because I was still on birth control. So it's like I was kind of hitting this wall. And so now that I'm off of birth control, I'm really hoping and praying that like I start to see some improvement. I also, I'm going to talk to my endocrinologist about it because I have an appointment with my endo in July. And I've actually, again, in my research, I found that your endocrine system is very much connected to your hormone health and just your hormones in your body, as well as your sex hormones, which is why a lot of people that deal with endocrine issues actually end up dealing with issues with like PMS symptoms and all of that. Super interesting. Would highly recommend looking into that because they're very connected, like very, very connected. So I want to do more research into that, but I also really want to hear from like a good medical professional about this specifically, because I got my blood work done with my nurse practitioner, who's not my endocrinologist specifically. So I'm gonna figure that out, but that's not in a couple, or it's not yet. Basically, it's in a couple of months. So all of this to say, I've had, to be frank, I've had a hell of a year. Like it's been a really rough year. There's been some highs and like amazing things that have happened to me and amazing experiences, but there have been so many lows. And this is just the brief overview of it. Like I have a lot of things that I could say, and I'm not going to, just because it's really time consuming and not everybody wants to hear that, and that's totally okay. But it's been a hard year for me. Like this has mentally been one of the hardest years of my life. However, I have learned a lot through this experience, and when I have really bad days, it's hard for me to like say that I've learned a lot. But when I'm especially like in a good place mentally, I'm like, okay, like you've been learning a lot and growing through this. And I honestly, like, I could not have gone through this experience without my friends and my family and my boyfriend, and honestly, more important than any of those things, God. Because like when I tell you I've really, like, I could not have done this without him, like truly. And I think like despite all of the crappy feelings that I've had and the crappy experiences that I've had, he has just been my rock, and he's been kind of using this really tough time to help me grow in certain areas of my life. And I don't know, if you ever have questions about just what I've been learning about, just as a person, feel free to reach out just whenever, because I'd love to talk about it, but I don't want to take up all the time in this video. But yeah, like I genuinely could not have done this without him, especially through those really low and dark moments that I've had over the last several months. Like, could not have done this without him and without like my family and all of them. But yeah, so I'm now in this place of kind of limbo. I am off of birth control, like I said, and I was a little worried about that just because of just things I've heard about, when women go off of birth control, they have all of these symptoms. And one of the biggest ones I found to be true is the emotional aspect of it, I've heard that, women feel like they've gone crazy because their emotions are so like roller coaster. I can confirm that is very true. I thought I was emotional before I went off of birth control. Huh, I had no idea it was coming. I swear I cry like every day. I've had so many breakdowns since being home. My wonderful family has been so gracious because I swear I've cried so much. And like my boyfriend, I literally, Miles, I love you. Because like I have cried so much to him and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going crazy. So yeah, that's definitely been a big thing. And I want to continue documenting this process and talking about it and just sharing my experience as I go along, because genuinely, to be real, like, I don't think we talk about this kind of stuff enough. And I think I swear, I said I wasn't gonna cry. I feel like a lot of women deal with, similar issues, whether it's with their hormones or with their health, and they're told that like, no, it's your fault, or no, you just need to exercise and you just need to diet. And I was told that, and I'm just like, no, like I am doing everything I can to be healthy. And it's such a hard thing when you're in a place where you're doing everything you can to be okay and to be healthy and to be the best version of you, and your body is literally reacting to that, doing the exact opposite of what you want it to and what you're told it would do under those circumstances or conditions. Like, it is the weirdest feeling. It's a really hard thing to deal with. And I just really wanted to create this space for women to feel like they're not alone, because it's like so many women, I like read about so many women's stories about how they like had drastic weight gain when they started certain birth controls. And like I said at the beginning of the video, like, I'm not against birth control specifically, but I do know that it actually has caused a lot of women problems. I've talked personally with people that like it's literally screwed them up for years, and I'm just like, my heart breaks, and I just feel like there's got to be a better alternative. There's got to be something that like that we can take that is for the same reason and it helps, but doesn't cause all of these side effects. Like, and who knows? But I want to create that space for women to feel like they're not alone in this. And I wanted to be open and honest about it because like I said earlier, I think I mentioned this briefly, but I have felt like hiding. I have felt ashamed of just my body and just all the things and just how I look and feel. And it's been really hard because like none of my clothes fit anymore, but I don't have the money to go buy a whole new wardrobe. So I try to buy some pieces here and there, but like my body just kind of kept growing. So it's just been a really hard thing. And so I felt a lot of shame and a lot of just like icky feelings about myself over the last year. And I like want to avoid people, and I want to not see people because I'm scared that like they're going to be as nice as they can about it, but I feel like they're going to just, have thoughts of like, man, she really blew up, or she really like, kind of decided to let herself go. And I'm tired of feeling that way. And so I just kind of wanted to put this out there to be like, this is where I'm at, and this is why, and it's not my fault, and I'm allowed to be like, this is not my fault, and this is my experience, and I'm sorry for crying about it, but I just wanted to be honest, and I wanted to be real, because man, I feel like a lot of times we're just not real with each other. Just as people, like, we can be so fake about so much, and I'm just tired. I'm tired of being fake. So like, screw that. Like, let's be real. Like, I feel like, a year ago I wouldn't have been able to cry on camera and post it and be okay with it, but here we are. So anyways, I digress. But this is where I'm at, and this is my update on my life, and it's been really hard, and I struggle still. I'm still struggling mentally. It's not the easiest thing to deal with this kind of thing, and I'm trying to be as nice as I can to myself about it, and I'm not good, but I'm really grateful that I have people in my life to just remind me to be nice and kind to myself and extend myself grace that I would extend to others. But anyways, thank you for watching this video. If any of you have any questions or concerns, or just kind of want to know more about what's been happening with this, or want to know more details about any of this, please do not hesitate to just contact me, reach out to me, whatever. Like, private message me, whatever. Like, I am here. I want to be here for you. Like, I'm open to talking about this. Like, I'm in a place now that I'm just like screw it. Like I want to talk about it. I want to get it out there. So yeah, like I said, I want to continue documenting my experience, and I probably will do a couple more videos about that throughout the summer. And I'll probably update you all on just like, just overall, like my experience, and if I see things improving or not, we'll see. But yeah, so anyways, again, sorry for crying. But no, I'm not gonna apologize for it, because crying is, you know, it's normal and it's allowed. So anyways, I'm gonna stop talking now. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe, like. I'm going through all the things that I say at the end of the videos because I'm so bad at doing outros. But yeah, I guess I will talk to you guys later.